Okay. Well, hello and welcome back. You have reached segment 14 of a podcast series that we're calling America Under Fire, The Old Guy Speaks. This segment is entitled Words and Narratives. Before we turn to the positive side of life in our final segment, segment 15, I've come across a passage by a man much smarter than me and whom I deeply admire. Mr. Jim Rickards of Newsletter and Other fame. He describes how words can be misused or weaponized, and Marxists have learned this lesson very well. So I've adapted the following from his words, nearly word for word, and this is important. So here we go. Controlling the meaning of words and controlling narratives can be used to undermine the belief that citizens have in their own society. One of the most prescient commentators on this process was Joseph Schumpeter. In his 1942 book, Capitalism, Socialism, and Democracy, he predicted that capitalism would fail and be overtaken by socialism, and his reasoning had nothing to do with a Marxist revolution. Instead, capitalism would be a victim of its own success. We would become so wealthy that we would take it for granted and forget where the wealth came from. At this point, we would move into socialism without a revolution on the view that we could afford it. He said the process would take 50 years, which turned out to be a little shy, but at least in the ballpark. The only place this philosophy really took off was in the U.S. It did not take off in university philosophy departments, but it thrived in English departments, where it spread to primary education. The idea is that words do not have objective meanings. They mean what those in power say they mean. Words are used to construct narratives, basically stories that define reality. The truth of the narrative is irrelevant. What matters is the power of the narrative to influence perception and behavior. So those in power define words, construct narratives, and control perceptions. This is the real purpose of taking over universities, foundations, media, and corporations. You get to control the narrative. The practical implications of controlling the narrative are all around. Climate change, climate alarmism, pandemic, DEI, ESG, BLM, insurrection, and so on. Indoctrination is implemented at the elementary and secondary school levels. You eliminate critical thinking, SATs, merit-based admissions, and so on. Stop teaching history. What's left is an ideologically brainwashed generation who know that they've been programmed to believe, but lack the ability to challenge their own views, to listen to opposing views, or to process facts. The battleground is in the elementary schools and the homes. My sincere thanks to Mr. Rickards for his wisdom and insights. You can learn more at his website, Strategic Intelligence. And once more, please remember this. Marxists share your vocabulary, but not your dictionary. Remember the example of their saying that vaccine passports would be used to facilitate travel when they actually mean to prevent or curtail travel. Learn to discern evil. And be wary of the word transformation. It's used regularly by Marxists in a positive tone to describe evil intentions. Squib, November 24, 2023. The UN Educational, Cultural, and Scientific Organization, UNESCO, released a 59-page report outlining several, quote, concrete measures which must be implemented by all stakeholders, governments, regulatory authorities, civil society, and the social media platforms themselves, unquote. The report targets the U.S. First Amendment by condemning what they call, quote, misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, and conspiracy theories, unquote. The intent is to silence actual true information and even core political speech, anything that contravenes the official narrative. The U.S. House Judiciary Committee has released a report blasting the, quote, pseudoscience of disinformation and declaring that this pseudoscience has been weaponized by the censorship industrial complex. I love that term. And let me add at this point that I'm more recently reading of an expansion beyond just the words misinformation and disinformation. It appears that henceforth we may see it phrased as misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, which will add a presumption of criminal intent for dialogue differing from an official narrative. The fence just keeps building around those wild pigs. Squib, Austin, Texas, nicely illustrates the dark and light sides currently competing in America and beyond. UT Austin, University of Texas, Austin. UT Austin has launched a hard-left solidarity journalism initiative, the description of which asserts that, quote, solidarity eclipses objectivity as journalism's dominant ideal. Let me repeat that one for you. Solidarity eclipses objectivity as journalism's dominant ideal. How evil. At the same time, the Brownstone Institute was recently established in Austin to shine the light of truth on the current tsunami of false narratives being pushed upon us, beginning with the COVID pandemic. I urge you to Google and check out the Brownstone Institute. They are amazing people. With that, I have only a couple books to recommend to you, one of which I actually have in my possession. This book is by Senator Ted Cruz, called Unwoke: How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America. General book on this by Senator Ted Cruz. The other book is by Naomi Wolf, who has been well known as a feminist writer. Her book is entitled Facing the Beast: Courage, Faith, and Resistance in a New Dark Age. So, Senator Cruz, How to Defeat Cultural Marxism in America, starts with Unwoke. Naomi Wolf, Facing the Beast: Courage, Faith, and Resistance in a New Dark Age. Many good people out there are battling these problems, and the above books are great examples. And with that, we close our coverage of words and narratives. Hope that you'll please come back for segment 15, which will deal with encouragement. Thank you.